Okay, good morning and welcome back. I'm going to do two videos this week because this video is going to be very specific and it's going to be a tutorial on changing the water pump and timing belt on this 1988 1.3 NZ fuel injected Golf. It's the same engine that was used in the Passat and the Polo end of the 80s, early 90s. Also I think in some of the Golf Mark IIIs. I'm making this tutorial because I couldn't find one online. It's not hugely complicated, but I think it'd be interesting for people who are going to try and do this at home, just to have someone do it for them. I certainly would have liked to see someone do it before I did it. I've checked out the Haynes manual, so I know more or less what's supposed to be done. And then later on in the week, once the radiator's turned up, I'll put the whole thing back together and we'll go for a drive. So for today, let's do the timing belt. This is all very Blue Peter. So what are we going to need to do our timing belt today? Well, we're going to need the timing belt, the water pump, and the rubber seal. We're going to need a torch, gloves and wiping stuff, ratchet set, torque wrench, some spanners, a white marker to mark the TDC positions, so that they're easier to see as we turn the engine over. And this, which is a camshaft counter holder. This is off Amazon. This was, I think, 19 euros. So not ridiculous compared to what a garage would take to do the job for you. Okay, so first things first, get the open. Now the first two steps have already been done here. The absolute first step is disconnect the battery, because we don't want, while we're turning the engine over, we don't want anything silly to happen. So we've done that, and the second step would be to remove, well, the bottom hose and let the coolant out. Now, I've already taken the radiator out because it had a hole in it. It's over there. So that's drained, so we don't have to worry about that. Next up, we're going to be over here on the alternator. We're going to release the tension so that we can take this belt off here. Okay, so single 13mm bolt on the bottom of the alternator. That should do. So that self-tensions. And then what's that, 17? 18 maybe? Okay. 17 on the top. Just going to loosen a little bit. Okay. And that, so that move, so that could be plenty. There's no tension on here anymore, and we should be able to just remove this. Okay, so I've just very quickly taken off this wheel, and you can see my nut there. That's on the bottom pulley, giving it access to the crankshaft. Always turn clockwise. So what we're going to do now is just pull this slightly over to the side, turn the engine, and it'll come straight off. There we go. So that's off. Take our ratchet off here. Then I can remove this and check its condition. Not great. I haven't ordered a new one, but I will. This is an original Volkswagen Audi part, so there shouldn't be too much difficulty in finding that. I'll get that ordered tonight. So next we're going to take off the top Cambelt cover, which is just a matter of unclipping these. 2, 3. That's there. I should probably do this with a screwdriver. Well, there we go. And now we can take off this top Cambelt cover. Okay, let me move the camera up a bit. There's the camshaft sprocket. There's our water pump. And then we still have some casing at the bottom. So what we're going to do first is find our marks. So this little dot here and this arrow here, I'm going to mark them white, and then down at the bottom there is this marker here and this marker here, and there'll be a notch in this wheel as soon as we get it to the right place. So I'm going to mark the top ones with some white pen, and then we'll turn the bottom. Okay, so there's no obligation to do this, but as you can see, I think it just makes things much easier to verify and to check quickly when you're doing the visual checks. Okay, so I'm now going to turn the engine and try and get both of those to realign. So again, always clockwise. Put some extensions on so I'm not in the way of anything. There's not a huge amount of resistance on this engine because it's only a little teeny 1.3. So as we turn, you feel compression in the cylinders. That's lined up, and you can see if I take this off and we get a little bit closer, that's lined up too. There is a notch you can clearly see there. I'm going to mark that notch white as well because that'll make it easier to see later. Okay, so next we're going to undo these 4 bolts. We have to hold it with the ratchet and then loosen them off. Out to focus. Not going to be very easy to film this, so just take my word for it that you hold them with one and then undo them with the other, because I need both hands and I shall be in the wheel well. It's not going to be easy to show that. Okay, well, they were in there pretty tight, but we got them out without any great difficulty. The last one is still in there, but it's loosened, because now we need to, obviously with that movement, realign everything and set it up straight again. Oh, not so easy one-handed. That's half. That's the top, and you can still quite clearly see the bottom is perfect. So we're lined up. Let's get that last bolt out, take the pulley off. As you can see, there is a hole and a pin, so there's only one way it can go back on. We're not going to get much wrong. This will come off. It's very, very tight. tolerances, oops, to get it off, so wiggle it about a bit till it finally comes off. Okay, well there it is. I did some wire brushing. As you can see, there was a bit of rust that kind of stopped it from coming off easily. Mustn't forget this car was stood for 14 years. So there's the bottom bit of our timing belt. We can now get on, let's see if that'll focus, clean everything up and undo the bolts on the water pump. So the next step is going to be taking off this plastic cover, and that way the timing belt will be completely free. And there it is, two 10mm bolts. This one over here is right up, hidden away underneath the alternator, and this one is easiest to get to from the wheel well. That's the one that was on there. So we've now got everything opened up. Next step is going to be up here to loosen the bolts that hold the water pump. We won't be able to take the water pump out yet. For that, we're going to have to take off this back plate, but we need to loosen them up because that is how the belt is tensioned on this car. So that's another 3 10mm bolts. We'll get onto that straight away. Okay, so if it'll focus, down there is the back of the water pump. It's sort of focused. And I've just got an 8mm Allen key. Pop it in there, and it's going to be pulled towards me to tension, push away from me to untension. So it moves quite easily. It's just because it's not very well filmed there, but you can see it. And we've lost a good fair bit of tension there. And as it turns, the tension just comes right off. Actually, it seems to be easier to tension than to untension from here because of the angle. Oh, but I can just push it like that. There you go. And that, sorry, pushed the wrong button on the camera. So that's now nice and loose, and we'll just slide it off, starting at the top, because there is a rim around the pump. So we'll just start here, pull it off, slowly, and there it is. Nothing's moved, nothing jumped, so nothing was under tension, which means we're still okay. Now, the belt itself looks fine. To be honest, there's nothing, there's no cracking inside or out. The car has about 120,000 kilometers on it, so it might just have been changed. There's no sticker. There was an oil change done here, 120-ish. But after that, the car was stood for 14 years, so it's absolutely worth doing. The whole kit for this particular car set me back a little under €50. Okay, so it's time to get the cam sprocket off. I've just unplugged this, which is the airflow sensor, off the fuel box because it was slightly in the way. We've got one 24mm bolt in the middle set up, and this, the tool we got off Amazon, which is sort of a counter hold. So we'll pop that in there like that, and then there we go, and that's it. So there's not really much to it. And we can unscrew this. Perfect. And I'll take this off. Now this again has a notch, so you can't put it on wrong. Our marking is there. Let's put it over here with the rest of the pieces. Right, so bolt here, other bolt there. You take all of those bolts off so that we can get this plastic cover off, and then we can actually get on with putting in the new fuel pump, the new water pump. So I'll just undo all of these, and then I'll come back in. Okay, so remember to put a collection pan underneath, which I did a little late, but I did do. And now, there's the, you can hear it, hemorrhaging. So in fact, two bits. No, we won't do it. Two bits. It has to come out together. It is surprisingly tight in there for an old car. But then again, this is once every 60,000 kilometres. So. There we go. So, water pump, plastic backplate. Water pump does still pretty much spin freely, but better safe than sorry. This, in fact, is an original Volkswagen part, so it's probably never been changed. So here's what it should hopefully look like now. Camshaft. That seal still looks pretty good. A bit of dirt, but nothing much. There's our hole for the water pump, still some coolant in there. And there's our lower sprocket. There. So, first thing I'm going to do while that's still draining is come back over here and clean all of these parts with some brake dust arrestor, because we want them to be nice and clean and shiny when they go back in. Okay, so that's it. Everything's pretty clean. It's time to start putting the whole thing back together. So, new water pump. That's our tensioning mark. Came with a seal. Pop the seal all the way down into there. I'm going to put a little tiny smidge of water on the seal. Just to bed it. This is Phoebe, so I wouldn't necessarily, there were cheaper ones, but only a couple of euros cheaper, so it didn't seem to make sense for me to go any cheaper than this, as this was cheap enough anyway. So, in that goes. That's part one. Next we need the top back plate, and there's our mark, TDC mark. I'm just going to squeeze that over the top. Okay, and around here. So then, just a matter of putting the bolts back in the way they were. It's not quite set right yet. Okay. That's set right. Something down here isn't quite right. Okay, yeah, it was just hooked, so no problem there. Put the bolts back in the same way they came out. So, all finger tight first. This one. So they were all 10s, except this one here, which is a 13. So that's that lined up. The three for the water pump are identical. This one is a pain, I think. Oh no, oh, it's just went in there, okay. Okay, and the third one. Okay. So, they're all lined up. I'm going for a closer look. There we go. Smart new water pump. This it doesn't look that clean anymore, but it did look clean when I put the brake duster ester on it and wiped it down. So it is pretty clean. Just keep doing these up. And then we'll get the new belt on so that we can tension it. So I'll have to put this on first. The top sprocket, which we have to tighten up these. They want to go to about 20 Newton meters. Okay, so we can put the top sprocket back on. Surprisingly enough, made in England. So as we said when we took it off, there's only one way it can go on. Let it slot in. That's it. And this wants to go, apparently, tight plus a quarter turn. Okay, that's tight. And now, same procedure, we'll just block this with our little tool, which seems to have worked quite well so far. And then there's our quarter turn. Right. Is it still lined up? Not quite. Oh yes, it is actually. That. That's exactly it. There is a bit of dirt on there. And the white mark has disappeared from cleaning. So we'll put it back on so that we can see later on. There we go. Okay, so it's now time to put the belt back on. One quick last clean up. Some water did drop out, dribble out rather. So make sure everything is clean, dry and dust free. which it now is. Take our new belt, which is here. Inspect it, make sure it's not. Okay, well unfortunately my phone ran out of space there, so I had to delete some stuff, and you actually missed just the pulling on, but it's on. And I was just explaining that the tension is in the middle of the longest span, being able to turn it almost flat. So the tension there is perfect. Now we just need to do up the 3 bolts on the water pump. And then we can put the lower cover, which is here, back on. Okay, so plastic cover's back on. Give it another wipe down because it seems to have seeped some more while we were playing around. Everything looks okay. And then it'll be time to put the pulley on, finger tightish, and turn the engine over by hand. Okay, everything's back together. Well, back together-ish. Obviously there's still covers and I need to tighten up the pulley bolts. But what we're going to do now is turn the engine over a few times. If we've messed up, then the markings won't line up every time we go round. They'll get further and further apart. Or we'll get stuck because one of the cylinders will hit a valve. So let's get this down here. Let's see how we did. In fact, I really want to do that with a ratchet. Okay. That's the top lined up, but not the bottom. So we're obviously out, and we'll have to untension the belt. We don't need to take the bottom cover off, but that's off. And just to demonstrate that, we'll go around once more. And line up there. Yeah, so we're definitely off. So we'll untension the water pump and try and make it on. Okay, so I've backed off the tension. This here is perfectly aligned. I'm now going to line up down here. Almost. And focus up, that's it. Okay, that's on, and that is also spot on. Let's tension it. Okay, this time looks much better. Top and bottom, it is in fact easier to do it with the pulley on. It's not what the Haynes manual suggested, but there we go. So once again, I've tensioned it a little bit. That's still a little bit floppy. I want a little bit tighter than that. And then do up the 3 bolts again and turn it over by hand again. Okay, let's try it again. There's our markers. 1, 2. Go for a full turn. Not so easy to do one-handed. Okay. There's our top mark. And there's our bottom mark. Perfect. I'm going to do this again 2 or 3 times, and then if it still works, I'll consider we're done. Okay, so there we go. Top mark, bottom mark. It's been around 4 times now. So that's perfect, we're done. Put the cover back on, plug this back in. And this is the point at which you would then put coolant in and run it. But as we have no radiator, I won't be doing that today. But, basically, so far so good. Okay, so everything's back together except the alternator belt, which I'm going to order a new one of. What I'm going to do now is, although it has no coolant in it, I'll be able to run it for a couple of seconds. Just make sure that everything's okay. So let's do that. Yeah. Fuel pump seems to be running fine. That sounds good to me. No smoke, no knocking. Okay, brilliant. Okay, well there we go. I hope that was useful to someone at some point who wanted to save some money and do this himself. It's not very complicated. I guess we've been at it on and off now for about 2.5 hours. And I'm sure you could do it quicker if you knew what you were doing, or if the car hadn't been stood for such a long time and wasn't quite so rusty. So it'll save a lot of money because it's not a cheap thing to have done. And well, seems to have worked. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, there are other videos on this Golf, but most of the time I'm doing up the house in Italy, and hopefully I shall be back onto that very soon. In the meanwhile, let's keep playing cars. The next thing to do here is going to be the brake fluid change, put the radiator in with the new coolant, and then clean the engine bay, clean the car, and take it for its MOT. Thank you very much. Bye bye for now. See you next time.